I'm Haley B. Miller, and this is Ohio Politics Explained, a podcast where you give us 15 minutes and we give you all the news you need to sound smart and impress your friends. Welcome back to Ohio Politics Explained. Today, we'll discuss the latest with Ohio's cannabis referendum, which teams won unclaimed funds for their stadiums, a request for voter information from the Department of Justice, and why Senator Jon Husted may have to testify in a corruption trial. I'm joined today by Anthony Shoemaker.
Hey, Haley, how are you?
Oh, it's been an interesting week. Let's start with the DOJ. Last year, the agency asked Ohio for a copy of its voter rolls, including personal information like people's driver's license numbers and the last four of their social. Secretary of State Frank LaRose turned over that data in February after meetings with the DOJ and Ohio Attorney General's office. The DOJ has asked every state for this information, but some are refusing to hand it over because of privacy concerns.
Yeah, I mean, some states are suing over this because of privacy concerns. You know, they're asking for, partial social security numbers, other information. But Frank LaRose turned over the information on Ohio's 8 million or so voters.
And Ohio's not the only state to do this. There are some others who have agreed to provide the information, but the DOJ said it has sued a total of 29 states plus the District of Columbia now for not complying with this request. So a lot of states led by both Republicans and Democrats have been wary of this.
Yeah, and then you also have, the fact that, you have some federal judges in some states, I think, Michigan and California, that have dismissed lawsuits filed by the DOJ about turning this information over, saying, elections are up to the states and not the federal government.
Right. And, the DOJ says it has this authority to request this information under federal law. As you alluded to, some federal judges disagree with that. States like Michigan, for example, have tried to provide partial information, stuff that may already be public, but doesn't include driver's license numbers and things like that. And they still got sued because the DOJ was like, that's not everything we asked for. That lawsuit was dismissed, though. So just a lot of different things happening with this. And Ohio, at least, is avoiding a legal fight with the DOJ.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing, too, is, the elections are a big issue right now. President Trump mentioned in the State of the Union issues about, election security. So that's going to be a big topic with the off-year, the midterms this year. And, there's a lot of fear about, okay, if the Department of Justice has some national, voter list, right now the states handle all of that stuff. And there's some security concerns around that.
Yeah, I talked to the ACLU about this, and they pointed out, there's never been one singular place where you can just get mass amounts of voter data if you're a hacker, a bad actor, and if the DOJ is successful in this effort, that sort of database could exist and could make a lot of people's information vulnerable. But, the DOJ Trump administration has said that their big concern is election integrity. They want to make sure that states are maintaining their voter rolls properly. And I think most significantly for the Trump administration, they want to make sure there aren't any non-citizens on the voter rolls, any non-citizens voting, which, as we know, is a pretty rare occurrence.
Yeah, voter fraud in general is pretty rare.
Our next topic is Senator Jon Husted. Husted will likely testify next week in the corruption trial of two former First Energy executives. As a reminder, Chuck Jones and Michael Dowling are accused of bribing a top public utility official as part of the House Bill 6 scandal. Husted and Governor Mike DeWine, along with some other big names, were on the list of potential witnesses for this trial. Do we know why the defense decided to call Husted?
Yeah, I mean, when Husted and DeWine, right before they took office in December of 2018, before taking office in 2019, they met with these First Energy officials, and Sam Randazzo was picked to lead the PUCO, and that timeline is very crucial to the case there. That December 18th and 19th timeline, and that's when Husted was having these meetings.
Yeah, and Husted's name has come up a lot during this trial and throughout the course of the House Bill 6 scandal, but he has never been charged with a crime. He's never been sort of outright accused of any wrongdoing, nor has Governor Mike DeWine, but Husted is up for election this year, and I have to think that him testifying in a state corruption trial is going to be fodder for his likely opponent, former Senator Sherrod Brown.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And, we still don't know yet if Senator Husted is going to be testifying in Akron in person or remotely.
Yeah, Husted's attorney had requested that he be allowed to testify remotely because of the ongoing conflict in Iran, so we'll see what happens there, but either way, it sounds like we're going to be hearing from him.
Yeah, and there's probably a 100% chance that this ends up an election issue.
For sure. Let's pivot to hemp and marijuana. A new law will take effect in a couple weeks, banning most hemp products and THC drinks, unless a referendum can stop it. Advocates have until March 19th to collect nearly 250,000 signatures to block Senate Bill 56. The group, Ohioans for Cannabis Choice, kicked things off with paid signature collectors, which can be a big asset to ballot campaigns, but now they're relying on volunteers and businesses.
Yeah, I mean, they're turning to basically the customers who buy THC drinks and these products. They're going to be gathering those signatures in smoke shops and in breweries that sell those kinds of beverages. So they're kind of going where the audience is.
Yeah, it's an interesting strategy. I talked with a spokesperson for the campaign, and he said they're trying to be prudent with their money. They want to take advantage of the volunteer support, but these ballot campaigns are really hard, and especially for a referendum, you have such a tight timeline to gather a lot of signatures.
Yeah, and you can't just go to, a bunch of giant breweries in Cincinnati and Columbus and gather the signatures because, you've got to have signatures from half the counties in the state. So you got to get enough signatures from 44 different counties.
Right. They do get 10 days if they submit the signatures and there are some problems with them. Maybe they didn't get enough from a certain county or things like that. So we'll see what happens. If the referendum is successful, voters would get to decide on this law in November, and it wouldn't take effect until then. But for now, it's still a pretty big if.
Yeah. So people who want their THC drinks can get them for now.
True. Our final topic is sports. When lawmakers gave $600 million to the Cleveland Browns, they also set money aside for other stadium projects, and the teams have started to come looking for it. The Cincinnati Bengals want $234 million to renovate their stadium, and the Columbus Blue Jackets want $100 million for Nationwide Arena. But none of these teams will be getting money anytime soon, more than likely.
Right, yeah, and you've got, I think there were 22 requests, and 8 were denied so far. Those have been mostly for smaller venues. But there's venues all over the state that are trying to get this money, like Nationwide Arena in Columbus, the minor league stadium in Akron, the FC Cincinnati stadium as well. There's a lot of, these big stadium renovations. Some of them cost hundreds of millions of dollars.
I think the Cavs were on the list too, right?
I think so, yeah.
But there is an ongoing lawsuit over this money. The lawsuit says that Ohio can't use unclaimed funds to pay for these projects. This was a big debate during the budget last year because critics of this said, hey, unclaimed funds belong to the people of Ohio. It's literally their money. But the law that was passed, does apply this only to unclaimed funds that have been sitting there for a really long time and haven't been claimed by people.
Yeah, and another thing that's kind of interesting is all of these requests put together add up to about $688 million, which is just a little bit more than what went to the Cleveland Browns by themselves.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see what projects the state prioritizes. I would imagine Bengals are near the top of the list, but who knows?
You would think the Bengals would say, hey, we're only asking for this much. You gave, Cleveland a lot more than that.
Right.
And we win sometimes.
And one more thing before you go. Governor Mike DeWine will deliver his final State of the State address next week. This speech comes with a lot of pomp and circumstance, but we're also expecting him to outline his goals for his final months in office.